Well, thank you everybody so much for joining us today. We're excited to share about Sinapis and about Talanton, and especially for you to connect with the leadership of our friends at Rabboni. My name is Matthew Roars, and I am the CEO at Sinapis. And for the first 10 years of my career, I served in investment management and a bit of private equity. And for a long story that we don't have time for today, God led me to the intersection of marketplace solutions to poverty and a deep love of disciple making. And as the Lord led with that, our family moved to Kenya in 2016. We spent several years training and accelerating entrepreneurs and really immersing deeply in the programs of Sinapis. And I wanted to give you just a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be doing with our time today. And then I'm going to introduce you to our partner from Talanton. So we're going to be sharing for the first 15 or so minutes some foundational information about each organization and about our partnership, and help you understand how we've gotten to where we are today. And then really at the core of our time, we're going to be interviewing Daniel and Pamela from Rabboni. And I wanted to let you know that Uganda is still facing significant challenges with COVID. And when we originally had planned the webinar, we did not know that there was going to be a curfew in place. So Daniel and Pamela are not together as we had hoped, but they're each calling in from home. And in our test run, the bandwidth was strong. I think everything's going to be great for a live interview. But if we do run into some trouble, we have some backup plans in place. Would love your prayers, though, that the internet connection would remain strong. And then we're planning for the last 15 to 20 minutes of the time for you to be able to submit questions and do Q&A with Daniel and Pamela. So if you look at the bottom of your screen and the Q&A button, that's the place where you can submit questions as they come along. You can do that all throughout the presentation. We'd love for that time to be as interactive as it can be. So I'm excited to introduce our partner at Talanton, Iris Wen, to you. Now, we had originally planned to have John Halverson share today, but due to some unforeseen scheduling conflicts, he was not able to join us. But I'm going to let Iris introduce herself, but she has been working really closely with Rabboni for quite a while, and she is an outstanding leader in the space.
Thank you, Matthew. And thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar. I know that I look a little bit like John, but my name is Iris Wen. I am an associate partner with Talanton Impact Fund, joining you today from Boston, where I live with my husband and my two boys. A little bit about myself. I have 15 years of experience in financial services and global SME development and investments. My career started off in investment banking at UBS, but I became a follower of Jesus when I was an undergraduate at Cornell. And since then, I have always felt the calling to use my business and financial skills to help bring people out of poverty. So I left banking and I ran a social enterprise for 6 years that did micro business development and micro lending, primarily in West Africa. And while I was there, I actually realized that even though microfinance was helpful, it often wasn't transformative enough on the societal level. And actually what the majority of the poor needed was a good, stable job. And actually that small, medium-sized enterprises were the engines for those types of jobs. So I transitioned my leadership from the organization, got my MBA at Oxford University, and soon after that joined the founders of Talanton to make that vision a reality. So Talanton is a faith-driven impact investment fund. We invest in growth stage SMEs in East Africa currently, but we hope to be a global fund in the next few years. Our name, Talanton, is the Greek word for talent and comes from the parable of the talents in Matthew 25, where Jesus calls his followers to use their time and resources faithfully. And then in the next parable, he says, use these resources faithfully to serve the least of these. And so that is our mission, to create jobs, to lift people out of poverty, to bring hope and transform lives. So our fund launched really in early 2019. At the beginning of 2020, we had one investment. Today we have 9 investments in 4 countries: Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. At the beginning of the year, we were at 4 million assets under management, and now at 11.7 million of committed capital. Over 7 million of those are dispersed or committed funds to our portfolio companies. So we have grown, and it has been a blessing to see this and an exciting journey. This year, we have invested in 4 companies already and aiming to invest a total of 10 million by the end of the year. So, this is not to say we are just so deeply grateful for our partnership with Sinapis, right? Because in order to find the right values aligned companies to make these types of investments, we rely on the work and stewardship that partners like Sinapis is doing, so that we can build a robust pipeline. And Sinapis has walked alongside thousands of companies and have visibility on which ones are more investment ready for an institutional investor like us. So Matt, over to you on Sinapis.
Thanks, Iris. So the word Sinapis, similar to Talanton, has biblical roots. It's the Latin word for mustard seed. And if you remember that familiar parable that Jesus shared, that smallest seed can become the largest plant in the garden, he says something really interesting, that the birds come and find rest in the branches. And we think that is a beautiful picture of when a faith-driven entrepreneur takes a small seed of an idea, launches and begins to grow a company. And as that company grows, it creates and sustains jobs and has an impact on not only those employees, but the dependents that rely on those jobs for their survival, and then for the community and the local church and all who depend on those economic engines in that market. So we equip entrepreneurs with training, acceleration, ongoing alumni community, and then we weave kingdom business and discipleship into everything that we do. And an important distinctive that Iris had already hinted at is we are serving entrepreneurs who are entrepreneurs by choice, not by necessity. These are people who want to grow companies that will ultimately provide for those employees and those dependents and the society at large. We've been serving entrepreneurs in East Africa since 2010. So we directly manage programs in Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda. So direct geographic overlay with our partners at Talanton. We also partner with organizations taking what we've learned over these 10 years in 7 other countries around the world. And we've collectively worked with over 6,000 entrepreneurs in emerging and frontier markets. And our goal with all of this that you see on the slide is we want to equip these entrepreneurs to grow companies, to create jobs, make disciples, and alleviate poverty in the name of Christ. So we want to talk for a moment about the problem and the opportunity that we face in markets like East Africa. And I want to pause just for a moment. There may have been some who have come on a few minutes into the presentation. We're so excited that you're here. I want to reiterate, we are going to be doing a section of Q&A at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions along the way, if you see the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom prompt, you can enter those questions, and then we'll be asking those of Daniel and Pamela at the end. So this picture may be familiar to you. This is a picture of Kibera slum in downtown Nairobi. And I lived in Kenya for several years, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. And the slum was a regular reminder of some of the most pressing challenges in East Africa. And the first of these, obviously, is poverty. Despite over $1 trillion in aid being sent to Africa over the last 50 years, extreme poverty has remained stubbornly high. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, economists were estimating that over 650 million people worldwide were living under the $1.90 threshold for extreme poverty. Most of these live in sub-Saharan Africa. Because of COVID-19, and my great suspicion is this is actually underestimating this as the pandemic continues, the projection has risen to almost 800 million people, which has set the world back 7 years in the fight against extreme poverty. Second major problem in markets like this is youth unemployment. So before COVID, the World Bank was estimating that between 2020 and 2030, 600 million new jobs needed to be created worldwide just to keep pace with population growth. So young people who can join the workforce and find dignified employment can be an unbelievable asset to an economy and to a nation. But those with no jobs, those who lose hope, may take to the streets, and this can lead to riots and to revolutions. And then lastly, corruption. In Kenya, 85% of the population would identify at a census level as Christian. But unfortunately, the nation is ranked 124th in the world by Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index. And what this does is it obviously places great harm on the economy, but it disproportionately affects the poor. It places a burden on them as they have limited disposable income and they have to pay bribes and facilitation fees. It's cutting into that limited amount of money that they have to provide for their families. And lastly, this can really erode confidence in the local church. So in markets like Kenya and Uganda and Rwanda and Burundi, we need to see new solutions to these pressing problems.
Yeah, and the problems are very real, but in the midst of that, there is opportunity and there is hope. So let me highlight some of those. Firstly, we know that 80% of the 600 million new jobs that Matthew mentioned in Africa will be created by SMEs. And now you couple that with the rapidly growing African economies, right, that both Talanton and Sinapis are in. Rwanda in 2019 was growing at 10% GDP, Kenya at 6%, Uganda at 7%, right? And there's a reason for that rapid growth. The IMF has said that by 2030, every 1 out of 2 people entering into the labor market will be in Africa. So let me give you an example of what this means from one of our other portfolio companies. All right, we just approved an investment into a running shoe company in Kenya. Almost every performance footwear brand has their shoes sourced and manufactured in China. This company wants to bring jobs and wants to create jobs and bring the manufacturing to Africa, but the skills are not there yet. And so they are doing this incrementally by upskilling and training and bringing new equipment into East Africa. Now, for the past 20 years, the textiles and garment industry concentrated in Southeast China because labor was cheap. As labor costs went up in China, though, the industry has begun to move from Southeast China to bordering countries like Vietnam and Indonesia and also Northern China. But the experts in the industry know that it's going to move again. And they're looking for the next place. And East Africa is on the map for them because they know that the labor market is strong and the costs will remain low in East Africa. So we are positioning this company to be a pioneer in bringing that industry to East Africa. Now, if you look at this picture, could you imagine if companies like that had enough scale to employ all of those people living in mabatus? Mabatus are these shacks in the slums. How much that would increase the quality of life for these people? Right. And so the opportunity and the hope is there. And we certainly welcome you to be a part of this if you are not already, because this is an exciting time and place to be.
Yeah, and the reality is that there are thousands and thousands of aspiring entrepreneurs in East Africa and around the world. But the challenge is that most of these companies are early stage and they have significant gaps in their skills and in their business models. And they need training and they need coaching and mentorship and ongoing peer-to-peer connectivity in order to find a business model that will really work, that will become a profitable venture, that will provide for their families, where they'll be able to increase the employment that they offer, as Iris was just talking about. And generally, this support is needed, contrary to what most entrepreneurs think. This capacity building support is needed before investment capital. And when we talk to entrepreneurs in East Africa, very commonly they will say, if I just had that loan or I had that equity partner, everything in my company would be up and to the right. But we know after years of doing that, there's typically some real key gaps in skills. And so at Sinapis, that's what we provide through the programs and the ongoing alumni community that we build. And because these earlier stage entrepreneurs cannot afford market rates for these types of services, philanthropic capital is needed to provide this kind of support. But the exciting news is as some of these companies grow, they become great candidates for investment capital. So for Sinapis, having an investment partner like Talanton that shares our mission is an enormous benefit. It's a continuation of what we do. So Talanton has put in place all of the legal and the administrative, the accounting, the compliance measures that need to be in place to connect investment capital with companies like Rabboni. And we're going to be talking more about that in a moment. And through their rigorous due diligence and active support of these businesses, both pre and post investment, they are helping some of the highest potential SMEs go to the next level.
Yeah. And we deeply appreciate our relationship with a strategic partner like Sinapis because there is just such clear synergies for the partnership, right? Like Matthew said, Sinapis is really good at finding and helping startup early stage entrepreneurs get the training and foundation that they need to bring their small businesses to the next level. We pick up from there when we find the best businesses that are ready for significant investment capital. And for us, the first thing we look for when evaluating a business coming into our pipeline is values alignment. So is the leadership team faith-driven? Are they humble and transparent and coachable? And we know that a company from Sinapis's program has already been vetted for that, right? And there's already been a relationship built. So just to give you some context, right? We at Talanton have vetted over 80 businesses and we've made investments in 9. So Sinapis being a partner who can refer us to companies that are more investment ready and can be a better fit for our criteria is something that can help us with our vetting process, right? In the end, what's most important is that we share the common goal to see economic, social, and spiritual impact by lifting up gifted entrepreneurs. So as the slide shows, we are both rigorous in measuring impact. And I hope you can tell that this impact is not just theoretical. I think it's really easy to get theoretical about, the value chain, but the amazing people we are serving are accomplishing the following. They are creating jobs. They are growing profitable businesses. They are using capital to get to the next level, and they are reaching people for Christ. Just as an example, for you to understand kind of the scale of the potential of this, from our 4 companies that are agribusinesses, over 10,500 smallholder farmers are directly impacted because they supply to these businesses. And that 10,000 number is expected to grow to 66,000 by 2025 as these companies scale through multiple tranches of our investment. That's only with our existing 4 agribusinesses. Full-time jobs are expected to grow from 828 to over 3,000 jobs across our existing businesses in the next 3 to 5 years. So that's incredibly powerful. And Sinapis has very impressive numbers as well, having worked with 1,300, almost 1,300 early stage companies, right? And what's important to recognize is that our partnership really puts a multiplier effect on these kind of metrics. And that's really what will help unlock the impact potential in Africa.
Thanks, Iris. So we've laid the foundation, but now it's time for the main event. So I am so excited to introduce you to Pamela and Daniel from Rabboni. And Pamela, I want to start with you. Would you please tell us what Rabboni does and tell us about your role with the company?
Yeah, Rabboni. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming for this show. You're very welcome. We are happy to have you. We are honored to have you. Rabboni is an agribusiness. It deals in agricultural produce, and what we do is we buy dry commodities from farmers, directly from farmers. We bring them into our factory, process them, package them properly, and bring them onto the market. That is what Rabboni does. I handle the people element of Rabboni. I handle administration and HR. I make sure everyone is happy. I handle the spiritual aspects as well. And I take charge of the general welfare of the members in Rabboni Group. That's what I do.
That's great. So Pamela, we first met you in 2018 when you joined the Entrepreneur Academy in Kampala. Mm-hmm. What made you sign up?
What made me sign up for Sinapis is I attended a business breakfast hosted by my church, Worship Harvest Ministries, Uganda. And during the breakfast, there were representatives from Sinapis who were sharing a bit about HR, human resource management, and I was so impressed with what they shared that morning. And when they said something about starting an academy, in my heart, I was like, wow, I'll look out for this academy and make sure to sign up. So as soon as they set up, I signed up and joined the academy. That's how I got to know about them and joined it, yes.
Yeah, that's great. So it's a 4-month program. You covered a wide variety of topics, and I'm curious what some of the key learnings for you were. What were some of the technical takeaways that you had? Were there other takeaways with Kingdom Business that really made an impact on you and your journey as a leader within Rabboni?
Yes. Joining Sinapis I was drawn because of the HR that they were presenting. However, when I joined the academy, I learned so much. I learned so much about everything because the academy is organized in such a way that they try to handle everything, a little bit of everything throughout the 4 months. So during the 4 months, one of the things that I really learned there was stewardship and formalization. One of the things that SMEs do one of the things that most of us SMEs do is that we are not accountable to anyone. We know this is my business, I can do as I wish with it. But from the training, I learned that that is not the way it is. This is a kingdom business. This is something that is not just about me, it's about so many other people that I'm not even thinking about. So the idea is to be accountable to your employees, accountable to your customers, accountable to the general public, because we are just stewards of this all. So I learned the whole concept of kingdom business, which brought in the idea that I'm just privileged to have these resources and I can use it to further the kingdom and not just, run a business like everyone else. Then, of course, the aspect of formalization, we decided to put structures in place to begin to set up processes, set up the way we work, segregate duties and all those things that we are not doing right. And then spiritually, I learned about moral courage. Matthew talked about bribes and facilitation fees. That's a very, very common thing in Uganda. You can't do business without bribes and facilitation. But in Sinapis, we were taught moral courage, and we realized that this business is about God. So we are not going to bribe our way out. We know that God will bring us the right people to do business at the right time. So we just learned to stand firm and, not compromise our values, because that's what everyone else is doing. So moral courage was very key. It was one of the things I took away. The other thing I took away is just using our businesses as a platform to get other people to get to know Jesus. So it is just being a business where people come work and go home, but we just try to come up with opportunities where we can get a chance to actually tell people about Christ whenever we have an opportunity in the organization. Yeah, so that's what I took home.
That's fantastic. So after Pamela completed the 4-month Entrepreneur Academy, she participated in our annual business plan competition, and then she successfully applied and was admitted into the 6-month Fast Track Accelerator program. Mm-hmm. So we spent the better part of a year with Pamela and really got an opportunity to know Rabboni and see some of the amazing growth that they had already achieved and see some of the potential that you see on this slide in front of you. So in 2018, revenue growth in excess of $350,000. From an employee perspective, 19 full-time people, 10 part-time people, sourcing from well over 1,000 smallholder farmers at that time. And you can see the growth and what's happened from then. The 2020 figures are December 2020 year end, where revenue almost tripled. Employee growth continued to go on a really nice trajectory. And the smallholder farmer vision is continuing to expand. So while we were getting to know the company better, we were also in conversations with Talanton. We were formalizing our relationship together. And in 2019, we made an introduction from Talanton to the leadership of Rabboni. And Iris is going to share some about the due diligence process and what's happened since. So Iris, why don't you take it from here?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Thanks, Matthew. So when Sinapis introduced us to Rabboni, the first thing we were really impressed by were the founders. So Daniel, Pam, and Henry, and their heart to honor God faithfully through the business, their desire to really see the farmers thrive, and the humility to learn and be mentored. And Pam, that moral courage came through. So that's what we said, that this was a team that would be a great partner for us, faith and values aligned. And just as importantly, we were impressed by their business acumen and actually the very strong capability to execute on a business like this, which is a low margin, high volume business where execution is really important. So we saw that. We met the team in Uganda a few times. This was pre-COVID. And we caught Rabboni's vision for growth. So we specifically saw their need to invest in significant long-term assets to get to the next level. And we also recognized very quickly that they had a major competitive advantage because of how deeply they were engaged with the farmers. Now, this relationship, by the way, is not just great for ministry, but just purely from a business perspective, when you work in Africa, you simply cannot underestimate how much relational capital de-risks the business, right? So, we at Talanton look for companies that are at least 500,000 in revenue and has the potential to take on 1.5 million to 3 million of investment capital from us in the next 3 to 5 years. And all of these criteria Rabboni met as we spoke to them. And so Daniel, the CEO of the company, and I embarked on quite a rigorous due diligence process for most of 2020. Now, COVID did slow things down, but also because we needed to work on some aspects of the company still for investment readiness, and we needed to have an honest conversation about that and look at the gaps and look at how we could work together to get them to an investment. And we did get there and made that first investment tranche of 570,000 in the very beginning of this year. So at this point, next slide, yeah. No, sorry, the one before, sorry. So Daniel, I would love to bring you on now and ask you some questions. Thank you for joining us. I've been so blessed to work alongside Daniel. And first of all, I have to say that I have learned so much from him. We have our regular bi-weekly calls. We had very regular calls when we were doing due diligence, and even now, the post-investment bi-weekly calls. Daniel, I'd love to get your take on the due diligence process with Talanton. Can you share with the audience how that was for you?
Thank you, Iris. Thank you for this great opportunity with you, and what we are doing as Rabboni, and how we are being stewards in the God's economy, using the business that God has given us and entrusted us with. The due diligence process was one of a kind. I keep talking about it because it literally stripped us naked to the bone marrow and literally showcased so many pieces that we were actually not putting our eyes on. I come with a background of economics, and I thought I had had all economics in the world that I knew until I went through this process that literally opened my eyes to so many things that were actually not analyzed and seen through with laser focus. So I'm grateful for Talanton. When we went through, it was a very, I must say, painful process, but good pain that enables the business to actually see where the pain points are and immediately start working on them and building a case on what needs to be done to make a business sustainable and scalable. One of the things that we went through with Talanton was actually our financial modeling. We had developed our own, but we had not thought through the scenarios and sensitivities necessary for this kind of business. And there were so many potential areas that could blow the company apart that we had never thought about. But through that interaction that we had with Talanton, we were able to bring out those areas and put them on the floor and start asking ourselves the hard questions that need to be put in place. What does it take for us to do this business? What margins are we looking out for? What costs can we actually be able to control? What would we be doing to bring down our aggregation cost? Those are things that we had never thought about, and this is something that the process enabled us to do. But that's on the modeling part, that there were so many other things that we were able to bring to the fore. In terms of our governance issues, we were the three of us, and each one of us was a leader in their own right. So we are moving in all kinds of direction. That structure was able to be distilled down and say, now we need to have some level of direction, that we are speaking from the same page, and we can be able to direct the direction of the business in a structured manner. And that has brought a lot of focus in terms of our thinking as a business. Previously, we were moving in all sorts of directions. Now, through this due diligence process, this has been assorted, and now we have a very clear strategic direction that the company is actually doing. In terms of the systems for the business, we thought we had, only to discover nothing on the table. I'll talk about the issue, especially with the financial system, that was literally laid bare, and we are now able to build this from scratch. we had already bought a system, but we had packed it inside our groups and we were never using it. And it was until we went through this process that we realized that there are so many things that we have lost as a company that we'll never have lost if actually we had done things in a certain way. Now, the due diligence process brought around some of the things and was able to enable us to see which key areas we need to focus on. One of it is actually the skill level in the financial controls that we have. Rather than just having the documents, we also needed to have the people to run those kind of systems. So that process enabled us now to get world-class people who are now highly very qualified that are running now our finance department and can, with a click of a button, tell you whichever business direction we're having and the kind of projection we should be having. Those are things that were a dream for us just 18 months ago. Then another thing in terms of thinking and also direction, we had certain figures in terms of with this where I want to be, but without any clear plan on exactly how to go about that kind of thing. So this due diligence process enabled us to distill these things to the minute detail, to the last kilogram, to the last gram of our operations. And we're able to bring this to the fore, and we can be able to tell you with certainty what we are going to be doing in 2021. We'll tell you certainty what we'll be doing in 2022. We'll tell you with certainty what we shall be doing in 2026. So those are some of the things that came out through the due diligence. It must be emphasized that it was a very brutal process, but a process that enabled us to get clear eye lenses for the direction of our business.
That's great. Thanks, Daniel. Yes, it was brutal. It would have been easier if COVID hadn't happened and I could have flown to Uganda to sit next to you and do some of those numbers, huh? Can you go to the next slide, Matthew?
Sure.
My next question for you, Daniel, is tell us a little bit about this picture. Why did you need the capital? And share briefly about Rabboni's growth plans.
When we started engaging with Talanton, we started now crystallizing our ideas and thinking in terms of what do we need to do. If you saw the other previous picture, we had a warehouse capacity that can accommodate 1,000 metric tons. 1,000 metric tons, you can only accommodate up to probably 1,000 farmers. It goes behind, you see that dark door, it goes behind there, but we could only accommodate up to 1,000 metric tons. Now, 1,000 metric tons is so small in a value chain that has 5 million metric tons in terms of production annually. So we wanted to be able to tap into that, and the structured volume that is traded, even as a country, is still very low, and it's having a lot of untapped potential. So out of the 5 million metric tons, you are having 950,000 that's actually traded in a structured way, which means a lot of grain still goes unaccounted for by farmers, and they absolutely have nowhere to take it. So we needed to build our capacity to handle a lot of grain by giving the farmers an opportunity to actually sell to us, but also us having the capacity to actually handle that grain. It's not enough for you to have the farmers all over the place, but you can't actually offer them the good solution of actually saying that I can actually offload a lot of grain that you produce from your farms. So we talked to Talanton and we shared them the direction that we wanted to, and we are very clear that we wanted to be able to invest in the handling capacities for the grain, and that is a picture of one of the warehouses. It's much changed right now as I talk in terms of the structure. So we want to be able to handle, this is a 3,000 metric ton warehouse that we are putting up, and we're going to put up another one that will enable us to have 6,000 metric tons. That barrels the company through a brick wall from having just 1,000 metric tons to 7,000 metric tons by the end of 2021. Now that's a growth that we would never have had if we are moving like we are moving before Talanton. We wouldn't have had that kind of growth even the next 25 years. So Talanton bought down that growth, and we are able to now to barrel through and get this kind of facility, and enables us to actually have a lot of volume to handle with the farmers and giving them the market access that they crave for.
Yeah, so Daniel and I have, like I mentioned before, we have calls every 2 weeks, and the last time we had a call, we talked about all the strategy stuff, right? And then we hung up, and then I called him right back and I said, wait, we forgot to pray. And that's the most important strategy. Do you remember this, Daniel? And we have yet to have our first board meeting yet, but I sit on the board of Rabboni, and I have promised Daniel that I will make it to Uganda for the first board meeting as soon as the lockdown and COVID clears. So Daniel, can you share about what technical support the company needs to grow beyond just capital, right? And speak to some of the technical support and assistance that Talanton has provided post-investment.
Yeah, I'll mention this as well. Talanton has shared with us and with Sinapis, shared with us a very good platform of faith-driven entrepreneurs where we've met the kind gentleman. I think it was Tom and what's his other name? Sorry, I forget his second name. But we had a lot of engagement, and we are able to hear our story as well and come on board and also provide us, because once you have this facility, you need to feed it with a lot of grain that can come through. So that was one of the things that we were able to do, and we were able to get additional working capital from them. I think it is his fund and Migma through the door. Then there are some painful areas that we needed to work on, especially with our financial controls and projection capabilities. So Talanton was able to get us a very good company called Open Capital Advisors, who sat with us for a period of 4 months and worked with us very deeply in terms of getting the checklists out in place, getting the documentation necessary, but also importantly, the culture of actually utilizing these documents. So they are able also to transfer skills to some of our key staff who are in the finance department, and also enabled us to identify a world-class chief finance officer who is right now working in the company and giving us that, cutting edge skill level to enable us, one, do the proper financial controls, but also to make sure that the company is thinking strategically, using finance as a control tool. Then the other thing was about, in terms of what we are dealing with food, and food by its nature, it's something that needs a lot of regulation. Rabboni as a company was never doing any kind of regulatory obligations as a company. We would produce food, we didn't know its suitability to eat as a commodity, but Talanton has enabled us now to tap into the Partners in Food Solutions, a US-based organization that has given us world-class volunteers who are working with us and already installing quality management systems and building good manufacturing practices in the business. Right now, we are already accelerating our quality certification as a company, and we are working already to build ISO certification that can enable the company to trade not just in Uganda, but across the entire continent of Africa, but also in other parts of the globe. So those are some of the areas that Talanton has helped us in, and we have brought down those kind of scenarios from probably things we would have done in the next 25 years are being done within the next within this period right now.
Thank you. Matthew.
That's fantastic. So again, a prompt, if any of you have questions for the Q&A, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Would love to transition. I've got 2 more questions for Daniel and Pamela, but we'd love to hear the things that are on your mind as you're hearing them explain more about the company. So question could be either for you, Daniel, or Pamela. You shared that one of the core issues facing farmers across Uganda is a lack of access to markets. So I just want to make it really clear for those that are listening, why is this such a problem? And what happens for a farming family when they can sell their crops to a reliable buyer at a fair market price?
I can come in on that. The smallholder farming in Uganda is done by what we would call the bottom of the pyramid population. This accounts for 11 million households who are engaged in smallholder farming in the country out of a population of 40. Now, I need to put that in context because you are looking at a population of 40 million, but 70% of that is actually a population that is below 18 years. So we have a very young population who don't own land, who don't have anything, and then they are relying on this very, small segment of farming households for their living. And a typical household has 5 members. So the problem most of these households have, which is a big percentage of our population, is access to market. And once the farmers actually harvest, they grow things that probably think that they are going to give them money, but the farming, the buying environment is so erratic because it's dominated by people who don't have anything strategic in their minds as they're running these businesses. So we wanted to come in and say that we want to be long-term partners. We want to make the investment necessary for us to ride this for the long haul. And by providing them access to market, you are saving them what they typically lose at harvest time. The farmer loses up to 40% of their produce if nobody is buying it within 2 weeks of harvest. So if there's nobody buying it, you are having a problem that the person has grown only to lose 40% down the drain. Why? The grain has already gone bad and nobody is going to buy it. So we come in as Rabboni to solve that part of the challenge. But importantly, there's the issue of making sure that actually the farmer gets paid. It's enough to get the market, but it's another thing actually to get paid. The people who run this kind of business mostly are what I would call a mafia kind of operation, where they go and take and then promise the farmer and then they disappear without a trace. That's a narrative we want to change in this kind of environment and say, we'll give you the coin for what you've actually given us. Every single kilogram will be paid for. And we want to build that element inside their minds to know that there's fairness in this business that's happening, and the farmer, whichever kilogram you bring out, is actually going to be paid for. Every single cent is going to be paid for. So that's the thing that we're trying to change the narrative in this kind of environment and this value chain, and show the farmer that if you deal with us, you'll be guaranteed to be paid. But importantly, you're going to be paid a fee that's fair enough. Just as I conclude, we've done a thorough analysis for the farmers and know exactly what the farmer actually can earn if they use recycled seed, and if they use improved inputs, and if they use fertilizers. A person who earns from recycled seed is actually making a loss most of the time, and especially if they are renting land. And we are saying this must change. There's no way you're going to get involved in this value chain when we are making losses. Sooner or later, you're going to get tired and say, enough is enough. This thing doesn't make sense for me. Let me go and do something else. And that's why you find many farmers are selling their land and coming to towns to drive border borders. Border borders are small motorcycles which act as transport. So they sell land to come and do, because this one guarantees them a cash flow every day. And we're saying the land is the asset that you have. You need to earn from it, and you are earning from it if you get a fair price and a guaranteed market for that.
And Pamela, maybe I can prompt you. I mean, that's fantastic. So you said 11 million farming households, an average of 5 members per household. A vast majority of those, if they don't have good access to markets, are making a loss. They're often selling their land. There's just this ripple effect in a negative way for those farmers. Pamela, what happens for a farmer? Maybe just paint a picture for us when the opposite is true. You have a reliable buyer. You're paid a fair price. What happens in the life of that family? Sorry, Pamela, you're on mute.
One of the things I just want to paint a picture of like 2 farmers, one who's getting a fair price and the other who's not getting a fair price. Like Daniel has said, because the nature of the business is kind of time bound, and you find that you have to act within a certain window, farmers get really, really desperate, really, really desperate. So when investors or middlemen or whoever come in to buy, they don't care about the farmers. They want to make the best out of whatever they have. So they'll take all the produce for a song. And because the farmer is so desperate, he's given like no choice. They'll tell him, this is what I'm offering, you take it or leave it. Now, a guy has been growing his crop for so long, he has nowhere to put it, he'll give it away. And guess what? The little money that comes in is probably not even sufficient to do the next round of farming. So he's going to sell a bit of his land. So you find that as the years go by, his produce is getting smaller, his available resources are getting smaller, and he's getting poorer. You know, he's going backwards, and yet he's working really hard. Whereas the person who gets the value of his crop, he's able to grow. He's able to grow because when you are assured of a market and you get the value for your crop, then the next crop, you're able to put in even more effort. You're willing to invest in better seed. You're willing to even rent more gardens so you can have more produce and make more money. And then you're able to take your children to school. You're able to even install solar electricity, probably improve your houses. Instead of being in a grass-thatched house, maybe you can move into an iron sheet house or whatever. But you can only do that if you're guaranteed market for your crops, if you know that it's going to earn money at the end of the day and it's not going to be wasted in the warehouse. And also you're not going to just sell it off for a song. So basically just that guarantee of market is encouraging for them to work even harder, invest in the better seed, invest in a bigger garden, and improve their lives at the end of the day. Because when their income is improving, they're able to access better facilities. And also just the relationship exposes them to a better life. Like when you go to the community and they're looking at you, you're probably driving and you came in a truck or whatever it is. For some of them, they live so deep in the village. Some of these things they just see, on TV or something like that, but they interact with you. Just conversation, you're able to open up their minds to a better life. And also they have something to aspire to. Like their kids look at you and they're like, oh, I can go beyond the village, by just being there. So in so many ways, we're able to impact the farmers in little ways, but very many ways, yes.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, linking the sophistication of the business and the value chain with the impact that has on real people's lives. Follow-up question briefly, and then we're going to transition to Q&A open to everybody. You've called Rabboni a kingdom business and a calling. Yes. What does this practically mean to you guys at Rabboni?
Kingdom business, the underlying principle is that all the resources belong to God. Now, as Rabboni, we are privileged to have these resources. We are privileged to have a company that is able to employ people and is able to actually buy from farmers. We are privileged to have people like Sinapis and Talanton that believe in us and are willing to partner with us on this journey. That's not something we take very lightly. And we know that it's only God that can bring us this far. It's only God that can give us such a great opportunity. So recognizing that has to change the way we do business. We are not like any other business on the street. Like I said earlier, even just buying from farmers, it takes courage. It takes moral courage to even buy from farmers. The easier thing is to buy from bulkers, because then they do all the dirty work, bring it from the village, probably transport it to town. Most people in our business actually don't even go out. They just open up their stores and say, please bring in the maize, we'll buy it here. And it's better, it's easier, it's faster. But we're like, no, we cannot just do this, because there's somebody out there who is losing out if we just have a shortcut. So as a kingdom business, we want to go the long way to just make sure that at the end of the day, we are creating an opportunity for even the lowest people on the food chain. And also, just as stewards, it's our responsibility to give back. And that's why we, like Daniel was saying, we want to pay for every little grain of maize that we get from someone. We do not want to exploit anyone. We just want everyone to get what they deserve. They've worked for it and they deserve it. The other thing is, as Rabboni, the name Rabboni comes from teacher. And as we learn, as Jesus gives us opportunities to learn, we want to be able to teach others. Like Paul was telling Timothy, that things I have taught you, that give them to trust it, teach them to trust that people will teach others also. And there are things we're learning personal finances, we're learning formalization, we are learning quality, post-harvest. Like there's so much we are learning because we're exposed, we are meeting Talanton, Sinapis, there's so much we are learning. So as Rabboni, we want to be able to teach the people that we interact with, the employees, we want to be able to teach them so many things. Even as we learn things that pertain to life, we pass it on to the employees, we pass it on to the customers, just for them to know that Rabboni is not going to compromise their quality. They are people of integrity. When they say they'll pay you on time, they'll pay you on time. The farmers, when we tell them we'll pay for your produce the right price, we want them to know that we'll buy the right price. We want to give them, we want to be dependable so that they have a dependable market. And all that is part of just being a Christian and giving people a glimpse of heaven. Because we believe the church is the gate of heaven. I believe the church is what the world comes to get something that is different from the world. When you interact with the church, you're getting a glimpse of heaven, of what God has to offer. And all that is what Rabboni is trying to do. So that just doing business with us in whatever capacity, even as an investor or a customer or whatever capacity. We want you to encounter Christ by just interacting with us in whatever capacity. And that's what kingdom business is that when people interact with you, let them experience Christ on whatever level, however little, however small, they are going to move away with an experience of Christ, which they cannot get from just any other business. Yeah.
Amen. Amen. Well, it's my privilege now. I'm going to introduce David Sims, who's founder and managing partner at Talanton. He's going to facilitate the Q&A session for the remainder of our time. So David, please take it away.
Thank you, Matthew, Iris, and most importantly, thank you, Daniel and Pam. It's just really wonderful to be with you today and to hear the stories of impact that you all are helping to facilitate. Daniel and Pam, there's a question I have that I think either or both of you may address. I think one of our folks in the audience is asking about COVID. Those of us in the States have lived behind screens, but the work that you do, the farmers that you serve, they don't have the option to be stuck at home behind a screen on a Zoom camera all the time. They have to be living their lives. Can you talk a little bit, share with us just how COVID has impacted Rabboni, and how has COVID impacted the people that you seek to serve there in Uganda?
Maybe I can come in on that. When we first had the first round of COVID, it really battered us so badly as a company because it caught almost everybody unawares. I think everybody can attest to that, at least in this country. The farmers were in the middle of the buying season, and all of a sudden, everybody is shut down and nobody is actually supposed to be moving. When we had that lockdown, and it became extremely very difficult for us. It actually brought down our projected growth in 2020 by almost 35% that we would have actually achieved. When we had the second lockdown, it found us a little bit wiser, but also, yes, it might have slowed, but it hasn't had that big of an impact in terms of especially getting us the volumes which we process to our final consumers. We had to think strategically and say, how do we bring the service, how do we bring the product closer to the farmer, closer to the lowest buyer here? And we wanted to make packets that are as small as 5 kilograms and 10 kilograms from the high of 50 kilograms that we actually are having, which could only be bought by people who actually had a lot of money. So that change in strategy has enabled us actually to get the volume across, not as big an impact it would have had if we are never prepared for it. But also in terms of getting the grains across, we were lucky enough that the president allowed the movement of the vehicles. So our trucks have continued to move. They can pick the grain from the farmers, the collection areas, and bring the factory. And we have staff at the factory that stay there full time. That's where they stay, that's where they sleep. So they are not affected by the movement. So that has enabled us to weather in terms of the heavy impact that COVID would actually have caused. So it has brought some disruptions, but we're a little bit wise on how to navigate around it and get the business moving. If we are only affected by us who now use the private vehicles because they are never allowed to move. And we have to stay home for how many, 42 days? And nobody could actually move. You could only move as a tourist in the country. So unless you are showing that you're a tourist in the country, you are never allowed to move public government officials. So it destabilized us a bit, but in terms of the volume coming in, we're able to get it in. Not as much getting deeper to the rural areas because we have staff that go to the areas to actually do the engagement with the farmer cooperatives, but we've weathered the storm somehow. We are a little bit wiser right now.
Thank you, Daniel. Another questions come in. The two of you with Henry, your co-founder, have gone through this faith-driven entrepreneurial journey, facilitated by Sinapis in the earliest years, and then as we've had the joy of working with you the last couple at Talanton. Can you share a little bit about what you're doing? And Pam, maybe I'll ask this directly of you. What are you doing to build the culture of your team to keep people in the team focused on following your direction and the Lord's call to build out Rabboni the way you seek for it to be built out. So Pam, you want to maybe start there?
Yeah, one of the things that changes people is just the word of God, sharing the word of God. Because just hearing it, you know, the Bible tells us the word is powerful. It's alive. It cuts through flesh and marrow and all that stuff, through the spirit and all that stuff. So one of the things that Rabboni is trying to do is just to introduce the word of God at the workplace. Being an SME, we recruit people from all over. Some of them are in different religions, but we bring them in and little by little introduce them to the word. We started from the top down because it's easier with the directors in the boardroom, top management. So in all the management meetings, we encourage a small Bible study before we start. So we study the word together, encourage each other on the word and things like that. Then for the staff members, when we have general meetings, we make sure there's always a preaching of the word. We believe that by introducing it to them, then they begin to take it in. And some people actually approach you later and they're like, oh, you said I had this. Can you make it clearer or teach me more about it and all that? But that aside, we also have values. And in this process of trying to align our values or align our processes, we've had to let go of so many people because we want people who are going to be aligned to certain values. People who are going to are going to represent Rabboni and carry out the standards that we have set up. So one of the things we've actually done is let go of so many people, brought some people on board who we understand, who are able to work with and are teachable, so that along the way, wherever they go, they are ambassadors of Christ and they're able to live up to the standards that we have set up, because the standards that we have set up are not for fun, they're not just for just, they're supposed to just give people a good encounter, to give people a glimpse of what it means to do business with someone who is running a kingdom business. Yes.
Yeah, Pam, thank you. Maybe I'll ask one quick question that if you can share briefly. I know that you all have had to deal with some real issues of corruption as you've carried out the business. How do you deal with the issue of bribery and how do you push back against that? I know we're short on time, but thought
yes.
that would be a good question.
Thank you, David. Bribery and facilitation fees or whatever you want to call it is real. It's so real, you know? And one of the things that we suffer is you can actually lose a contract because you did not give someone whatever it's called, you know? It comes with all sorts of names depending on who is giving it to you. It's an unwritten rule, like it's not written anywhere, but you're expected to comply or you lose the business. One specific example is we used to work with a company, which I will not mention, but every time we made a deal with them, the amount that we paid and the amount that was receipted was always different, you know? And we did this for a while before we joined Sinapis. I didn't like it, I was uncomfortable, but well, you know, you just accept it and like, this is the way we do business around here. Like if you don't do it, then you don't get the job. But after attending class and learning some of these things, I recall having a conversation with the lady and telling her, you know what, we're not doing this. Like we're giving you the price for it. And if it's not, then I think we'll just have to go. And she actually abandoned us for a while and we lost business with that company. But eventually we got other companies. There are some people who are still willing to do business the right way. And I think that's the whole point of trusting God, because sometimes we think that by giving the facilitation, you're improving your business, you're improving your profile, you're getting more clients on board and all that. But at the end of the day, you can only do so much by human strategy and all that. At the end of the day, it's God and it's the Holy Spirit that can do a lot more. So by just deciding not to do that, we made a few losses, lost a few clients, but now we have clients and they're good clients. They pay us the right way. And I think it was the best way to go. And I really, really thank God for that. Yes.
Amen. Thank you. Matthew, let me talk back over to you.
Yeah, well, I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us. Again, thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Daniel. Both Sinapis and Talanton believe that this is a different way to think about material poverty alleviation, about thinking about reaching people with the gospel and in investing for the kingdom of God long-term, and equipping and investing in companies like this. I hope you come away with this encouraged, thinking this can really get to the roots of some of these challenges. This is inherently sustainable and can have lasting impact. To reach more companies like Rabboni, though, we need your help. And so as you see on the slide, one way that we could do that is we'd love to continue the conversation. So you've got our contact information here on the slide. That could be with one or both of us. Each organization is happy to collaborate further if you'd like to hear more about the partnership. Another opportunity is lending your expertise. There's going to be increasing connectivity between business leaders and entrepreneurs around the world and companies like Rabboni. And if you've got interest in that or would like to help each organization grow, we'd love to talk more about that. And then thirdly, you can invest in the movement. Iris, I'm going to let you share about what that looks like with Talanton, and then I'll wrap that up with Sinapis.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay, I'm not on mute. Okay, good. Yeah, so as Matthew said, it would be great for us to have a conversation, first of all, to understand what your goals are and how we can work together to combat poverty through job creation. If you're interested in becoming an investor in the fund, Talanton is structured so that we can take any kind of capital, but we do specialize investments from donor advised funds and family foundations. In fact, we have been approved by 7 different donor advised funds to make that easy for our investors. So we would love to have a conversation with you about that, or just to tell you about any of our other portfolio companies if you want more good stories about impact. So happy to have a conversation.
Yeah, and from an investment perspective with Sinapis, it was a particular philanthropic donor back in 2017 who said, I want to help you expand what you've been doing in Kenya to Uganda. You just look at the dominoes that have fallen. So philanthropic investment in so many ways creates the kind of deal flow that we're celebrating today, and the way that Talanton's been able to continue to come around Rabboni. And so I want to just leave you with this. We don't have time for Daniel and Pamela to respond, but they have a vision to reach and impact over 500,000 farmers in Uganda. And as we go, I would just ask you to pray and also to consider what kind of a difference would that make in the country. Sustainable, replicable business led by local entrepreneurs who have a passion for their country, for those that they serve. We obviously are passionate about this opportunity. Again, just want to thank you so much for joining us. If you've got follow-up questions or would like to talk, please let us know. Thanks so much.